Welcome to the DKM podcast, the Don't Know Much podcast, where we don't know much about anything, but what we do know is that it's good to be back. It's good to be back recording, having fun, talking, all that smack, the chit chat between good buddies. We were going to have a nice little episode today with as a trio, but some things came up, and that's partly uh, what we're gonna start this
That's
episode
life.
with. Just updates, just stuff going on. Things just got
Yeah.
busy. It's just the normal things of life. There's just some things you can't really quite control that are out of our hands. But is there when it comes to me, there is a it's a funny thing when it comes to getting fit into my whole health journey. I guess the gym has become a little bit more of a happy zone for me. Naturally, your brain will produce happy chemicals when you lift something and put it back down over a long period of time. So on Saturdays, I usually start the weekend fresh with that for the past few Saturdays. So all that's happening. Plus dealing with errands and dealing with all the other things going around. So it's just normal life stuff. Nothing about like, oh, I don't want to record or anything about that or deal with our audience. It's just something small and simple as just life.
Yeah, exactly. We haven't hit that kind of high stride yet. We're like almost at that million mark, and then later we just kind of like don't upload content for years on end. And we might make an update video here and there saying, "Hey guys, I'm coming back. I'm gonna come back, bros. Don't forget to sub to my Patreon, bro. We're gonna, I really need the money, bro." And then later it's like you wait, and then they make this grand return, and then the viewership isn't there. I know what you mean, Marcos. I mean, thankfully we're not even at like that kind of sub count yet, so I can't even act like oh wait, you guys want me to do my job? Hold on, I
Yeah.
can't do that.
And then like we'll come back after like a year hiatus after like there's like 20 docuseries online docuseries on YouTube saying like where did a
The rise and
DKM
fall of the DKM podcast. Where are they now? Is they in jail?
the disappearance.
Accusations came in.
Yeah.
The disappearance, and then it's like, and then I'll be in the comment section like, "Hey man, great video for hyping me up. Can't wait for my return." Click, a heart comment.
Yeah. Or
Yeah, there's a lot of YouTubers I really liked, and it bothers me when like the last uploads of their videos were like, "I'm coming back, don't worry, I'm still working, I'm doing this and that," and it's like, "Hey man, look, I don't know you personally. I can't look up your work file. I can't look up your timesheet of when you're actually doing work. Is it possible that maybe you just went through a massive creative burnout? Yes, absolutely. But I'd rather you just be upfront with it. But then again, it could just be a depression thing because like when depression hits you like a truck, it just completely deflates you and it doesn't make you want to do anything. But I think like the worst update video I ever saw was rest in peace was Kitty 0706. If you guys don't
Mhm.
remember who he was the one who made the team Fortress 2 video. I'm sorry, I'm
It's a
drawing
very
blank here.
popular one, yeah, from
Right, really good Gmod animation video, really hilarious shit. I still watch his stuff to this day.
mhm.
And he was making this video how like, oh yeah, I got cancer, I'll be feeling better soon, it's gone, it's no longer affecting me anymore. And then like he disappeared again, and then the news broke out that he unfortunately passed away due to his cancer, and it fucking depressed the shit out of me. I still watch Team Fabulous 2 right now, and that shit still has like 27 million views. But yeah, I just have a gripe with like other bigger YouTubers that are perfectly fine, aside from maybe some issues going on in the background, where they just kind of like tell their audience like, I'm coming back, make sure you keep supporting me, guys, make sure you donate to my Patreon and this and that. And that's why I'm very a stickler where it's like, if you promise like a membership or a Patreon or something like that, you have to be committed to provide that content, or you need to tell your audience like, hey, I'm not going to charge you this month because I'm not going to be working. Like, let's say for example, you and me are going on this trip, Marcos. Let's say we're going to be gone for a month. Let's say you and me are just having a non-homosexual, totally straight heterosexual road trip
Babe, you
together.
weren't supposed to say that on the podcast.
Come on, dude. They're gonna know. They're gonna know. I would tell my audience to be like, "Hey guys, just so you know, between the month of this and that, I'm not gonna be working. I feel bad taking your money. I'm going to remove the Patreon monthly subscription. So just so you know, because I would feel bad if I took your money for absolutely doing nothing. Now, I'm not talking about like ad revenue stuff like that. I'm talking about like me actively. You have to actively give money to me in order to support me. But anyways,
That's
enough
understandable.
about that. Let's
Yeah, that's understandable. Like I can see where you're
yeah,
coming from.
I have a big gripe with that because I've seen too many big YouTubers open up a Patreon thinking that like, oh, it's I if I do this, it motivates me to keep working, or it motivates me to keep getting paid. It's like, no, you just want a paycheck every month and not have to worry about putting any content out there.
There
And then later when
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Mhm. No, I was just gonna say because there's been a lot of people who do like Patreons that I see that they make these like ridiculous goals, or
Oh,
they
right,
make
right.
the goal, then the goal gets achieved, and then they never develop, they never deliver, or they'll change it up in a way that's like, no, guys, it's not actually what I meant to do. I won't say any names though, but you guys probably know who I'm talking about. Has done this before, and now they're notoriously known to be like, oh yeah, this guy, he has like a Patreon that's dormant. It's just literally there just to be a deposit, just to give him money.
There is a
Um,
and I'll wrap up with this. There is a YouTube channel I watch
yeah.
called Abum Preach, and they're pretty funny. And there'll be times where they just go on a hiatus when it comes to creating content, and
Hmm.
it's not because they got tired or anything. It's because they're at that like cusp of like getting that burnout, and they're like, you know what? Let me just take it slow. Let me take it chill, and like they produce videos when they reacting to things, so they just have fun doing certain things.
Right.
But it's not something that they like they go crazy in for. And I think that's a healthy way to produce content with other people, and in such a way where your audience knows the type of character you are and how you address your audience, is saying in the way like, hey, when I have to take a break, I'll take a break. I won't say it
Hmm.
outright, but like uh like I'm not trying to be like what do you call it, a someone who just makes you wait or takes your money from Patreon, because apparently their Patreon is pretty packed full of content. So people aren't complaining on that, at least on that regard.
Right. I mean, that's the thing though. Is like when you open up a Patreon, it's not just like, oh, another source of income. You also have to promise a specific exclusive style of content. For example, like if we had YouTube memberships or Patreon, I prefer using YouTube memberships because I rather stream on YouTube, and it makes more sense to be like,
Right,
hey, be a YouTube member. It supports me, and you get all these perks and stuff, right?
right,
A Patreon's more like if you're someone who doesn't like YouTube and you want a little bit more of a higher payout and you want more of a personal connection. A Patreon's a little bit more of a better option. But it's the internet. You have all these different ways of increasing your revenue stream. If you don't like your 9 to 5 job that takes up all your time, and you don't have time to work a second job. Well, if you start a YouTube channel and you have an audience that's willing to support you and financially support you, you have like 5 different layers, and there's all these like easily searchable articles and websites explain like what's the perk of using this crowdfunding site versus memberships or Twitch subs and yada yada yada.
right.
But with that said, though, let's actually go into our updates and see what's been going on with us. I know you said that you only just went to the gym, Marcos. You have anything you want to say?
Just gym, family stuff, just catching up on certain things, studying. It's just a different array of things that leads to just taking up my time and efforts. And usually when we record, it's somewhere between like an hour to 2 hours time frame,
Hmm.
and to cut that off on my weekend, sometimes it gets a bit difficult.
Yeah, no, I get you, and that's to be fair though, because like we're both adults. We all have our lives, and our lives could change within an instant. We're not like high schoolers that all go to school from Monday to Friday, and then we have this time availability. So yeah, I don't blame it. Where it's just like, oh, why can't these two people, correlate with each other? Lives are complicated. People get families, they get friends, they get busy, for better or for worse. And sometimes it's just we have a scheduling conflict. And that's kind of what's been going on with me. I think in the last episode, I briefly touched about how I started a job. This is my third job this year. I actually started. And don't worry, it's all good news. It's
Hmm.
actually not a bad situation like early this year. If you guys don't remember, I'll give the quick rundown what's been going on with me. This year, in the year 2022, I told myself my biggest goal was to leave my security job. I've been doing it for 3 years. I was kind of jaded from it. I was like realizing that, man, this is just getting really stressful. It's the drive is a bitch, yada yada yada. And so my goal was to move out of that job to go find something that could pay me better and move a little closer, right?
Right.
So I went through 2 jobs. As you guys know, I went through a logistics company. That place was a shithole. I hated everybody there. They hated me. We went our separate ways. Then the second job was a work from home position, which I thought it would have been the dream job, but unfortunately, though, it doesn't really change much if you're still working at a call center environment, but you're working from home. So I left that job after they tried to pull a fast one on me. I'm basically making me do 3 levels of department work without a single dollar or cent raise. So I protested. They said they weren't going to do it. I said, all right, thank you for the answer. I'm gonna hop out. And so in between that second job and starting this current job, there was a little bit of a time frame. I kind of underestimated how long it was going to take me to get hired between the second and third job. So I kind of was like pretty much on like living on like beans and rice essentially. I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to spend any money. I completely lived like completely like a hermit because I didn't want to because I realized it's like, man, I was hoping to start like mid-August, but I didn't start working again until like mid-September. So, you have to get back up and everything and yada, yada, yada.
Hmm.
So, I won't go into details, obviously, because I won't dox myself. But basically, though, the job at the moment, let's just say it's a financial institute. And I basically, it's pretty close to my house. The only problem is, though, that the area I drive through gets pretty heavy with traffic, both when I get to work and when I leave. So, it takes what should be like in any other time, it'd be like 10 minutes to get there from my house. But from there, like, I want to say it takes like 25 because you're just dealing with a shit ton of traffic. Basically, though, the way how they started the job was that, like, hey, look, kid, here's the situation. Originally, they wanted me to work part time, and they were like, hey, we only need a part timer, and at the time, I was willing to take anything, right? So I took the part time position, and then later, right before I started the work, they made me fill out this paperwork about like my basic information and shit, and they said that like there was a box that says like sign for which position you wanted. So I checked both part time and full time because I wanted to just cover my bases and say, hey, look, I am okay doing part time right now, but I want to, if the full time opportunity opens up, please let me take it. So they called me back. They said, hey, do you want to just work full time? Like, yes, absolutely. So now they gave me a full time schedule. So the way how this works is that I'm pretty sure you know where I'm coming from this one. Because most jobs, they give you, especially if you're working like in a large environment, let's say that like there's multiple people being trained at the same time, they will put you through a training class first. And then after that training class, they will put you into working in the field. But like maybe you'll have someone behind you, or maybe you'll be watching someone do the job. And then you could like get comfortable with it. Well, this job did it a little bit differently. Originally, because the training class wasn't going to start until mid-October. So mind you, I started in September, and they're like, hey, mid-September for that matter. Look, we don't want you to like wait around and wait for this training class. Would you like to just start working here? And I'm like, yeah, well, I'll do what I can do. So I like that already. That's already a good start because nothing kills my motivation at a job than going through the boring ass training class situation in any job. So the way that they just put me immediately on the field and they say, hey, do this, just do this something basic, go handle this thing, go do that. I like that. It makes me be like motivated to be like, oh, I want to learn more. I want to do more. I want to know what my job is entailing once I get back on the field.
Right.
So eventually I did that job and I basically broke it down the math and the job was great. I'll say this right now. The clientele, pretty good. The people I work with, fucking fantastic. It's so nice to come to work now and not feel like that you have a personal enemy out against you. Unlike my first job I started this year, which was just fucking awful. And it's just great. It's just a feel good vibe. The thing is, though, and the why it's taking them so much of my time is that I'm working 9 to 5, except on Fridays where I work from 9 to 6. And the issue is that not only do I have to like wake up super early to get to work, I also have to be there at 8:45 to get ready and everything.
Hmm.
The thing is that they said like, look, when you're training, we want you to work as much as open as we can because once like they give me my official schedule, I'm gonna have work 5 days a week, and then I'll have like either Wednesday or Sundays off. And they're like, hey, but look, since you're in training, we want you to get as much experience. Why don't you just work every time that we're open? So we're open from Monday to Saturday. And while granted, Saturday isn't so bad because it's only open from like 9 to 1, it's still like 6 days a week. And I am putting in the hours. I have not missed a single day because I want to make all that money because I know at some point I'm going to go from like 45 to 50 hours a week down to 33 hours because the plus and minus of this job, which I really like, I don't care. I think that to me, I think it's personally well worth it. I've always hated the 30-minute lunch. I think 30-minute lunch is way too goddamn short for a guy like me, especially with my condition where I have to go measure my blood, get my blood sugar reading, make my food, eat it, and then I have to go to the bathroom, inject the insulin, then come back to work. I feel like 30 minutes is way too little time. I remember like when I even worked from home, if I had to like drive to get something to eat, I had to like figure out like a speed run in my mind was like, okay, I know from this time and that time this place doesn't get busy. If I order my food here, I can pick it up at X time, and then if I eat it on the way back in the car, it's too stressful. So with this job, they just flat out give you an hour lunch. They say like, hey, you could, just take an hour lunch, go eat for an hour, and then come back. And yes, it's unpaid for, but to me, I like that. It gives me more of a breathing time where it's like, okay, cool. I could go make my food, eat. Okay, I still have 45 minutes to eat, go back, clock in, and then go back to work. And I still need to go, and I'm like, my last job where they treat using the bathroom like it's a goddamn privilege. If I just got to use the bathroom, I just say, hey, I'm going to go use the goddamn bathroom. I know it's crazy for some people out there who's listening to be like, well, what is this all about? Well, if you worked in a call center, you might know where I'm coming from, where it's like they don't want you to use the bathroom unless you're on fucking break.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't mind it. Like, yeah, I know some people might say, oh, but I don't like that because if I work 5 days a week, that's like 5 hours taken up out of my week. And I'm like, yeah, but if you work on Saturday, you make up the hours anyway. So, you know, I'm not really going to lose my sleep over it. So the way I look at it is like, okay, I know for a fact at some point I'm going to get my time open again. Plus I'm going to be, my hours are going to get cut because obviously though they're wanting me to work a lot of hours while I'm training. So I just been busy. That's the best way to describe it. All I've been doing is just waking up, going to work, coming home, watch a little bit of TV, fall asleep, and do that. And one of the things that recently I had to get back into doing was actually getting some sleep. And that's why if you might have heard me in the last episode we recorded where I sounded like I was really delirious, it was because I've been in the first like 2 weeks of this job. For the life of me, I only could get by with 5 hours of sleep. I don't know if it was just the stress. I don't know if it was because I was nervous about starting this new job. And to be fair, though, like the job, I didn't like start at like the best way possible, which is a funny story I'll tell you about later. But essentially, what happened was that I would go to sleep. I would wake up in the middle of the night. I would go eat something because that's because my problem is that my brain has been programmed since like for over 3 years of being like, okay, it's 3 a.m. You got to go eat lunch now. So I wake up at 3 a.m., go drive to get something to eat, and then I come back home, and then later I would try to go back to sleep, and then I have to wake up at 7. So that's been like me for the last like couple of days where it's like I sleep for 5 hours and then I work for 12 hours. And that's what's been going on with me. Now it's slowly coming back. Now I'm actually wanting to sleep 8 hours again, which makes me happy because now I'm not in that like weird awkward state where it's like you're awake but your brain is completely fried because of lack of sleep.
Right.
So yeah, and I think what also started the issue was that on my first week of this job, which why I like this job so much. Basically, on my first day, you know, I'm pretty sure you know about the I-9 documentation. You need like your passport, your driver's license, or your social security card. So I don't usually carry my passport with me. I keep it, my mom keeps it in her drawer whenever we need it. And I've been using this bad boy for like 2 months, like going to job interviews and stuff. And I didn't really think much of it. It's like, all right, cool, got the passport, put on my nightstand. When Monday rolls over for my first day, I'll go to HR. They would sit down with me like, all right, we need your I-9 documentation. I'm like, okay, no problem. So I give them my passport, and in my passport I have my social security card on it. So they look at it. They're like, okay, we have a problem. I'm like, oh, what's the problem? Well, sorry to tell you this, man, but your passport expired like 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, oh, shit. Okay, no panic. It's cool. I know how this thing works. I could use my social security card and my driver's license. They couldn't use that either. My social security card apparently had like this piece of text on it saying like, only authorized if the passport was legitimate. So I was kind of like up in shit creek because I'm thinking like, oh god, what do I do now? What's the fastest? What's the best thing? Like, well, the only two options we could do is either option A, you renew your passport, or option B, you renew your social, and you could just bring your receipt to us, letting you know that you're gonna bring it later on, and we should be good. So I'm like, oh fuck, not a good way to start my first day. And you know what? I give them props for that. You know, normally in any other job, I don't want to blame them. They like, you know, they kick me out of the building. Like, hey, get the fuck out of here, you dumbass. You should have gotten that taken care of.
Right.
But eventually, we worked something out. I just told my supervisor on Tuesday. They even told me to come in an hour early because they had like this meeting or something. I just went up to my supervisor, who's super cool, really friendly. I just said to her like, "Hey, look, boss. Like, here's the situation. I need to renew my social security card, and the fastest way I could do is if I go to the social security office up, you know, I won't say the street, but Marcos knows where I'm probably talking about.
Yeah.
And I basically tell like, look, here's the situation. Either A, you let me leave early so I could get this taken care of because of course this is a government building. They're only going to be open 9 to 5, or option B is I could go right now and get this taken care of. It's like, yeah, go get it taken care of. Don't fucking sweat it. And I'm like, you sure? It's like, yeah, absolutely. Because to her, she probably looked at it as like, I like this kid and this kid's a good worker. But you know, if we have to fire him because of something like this, I'd rather he just miss like 3 hours of work so he gets this taken care of and then he comes back. And I was so grateful, man, because I was stuck in that office for like 3 hours and it was so stressful. But thankfully everything worked out, and now I'm fine at working at the job I'm working at right now. And yeah, overall it's just great. I mean, I'm still in training right now. I'm still gonna be working like Monday to Saturday for I think another 2 weeks. But once I get on the floor, or maybe I don't know, maybe another month, I'm not so sure. They still haven't like really broken it down to me. The way I look at it is like, if I can make more hours right now, I'm gonna take the more hours right now, and I'm not gonna fucking complain about it, because a lot of the people who work there are also part-timers, really young people too. Like, I'm like 26, and a lot of the people I'm working with are like in their early 20s to down to 18 and 19, which is kind of crazy to me. But the way I look at it is like, well, this is gonna be great for my resume for sure. And I like the company, I really do. I like the people there. The clientele is really good, and the coworkers are really friendly too. But I still want to pursue IT. I haven't quite given up on that thing yet, because my only gripe with the job is that the pay isn't bad. It's actually better than when I was doing security, and it's closer to my house. But it really, for the work that you're doing, it's a lot of stuff you're doing, but it's not like, oh my god, it's so stressful that like I need to get paid more money. It's more like, hey, like I know that this kind of place should pay people a little bit more, but I'm not going to complain about that, you know? And the way I look at it is I want to still finish my IT certification, because right now I put it on pause because I just don't have the time and money right now to go to continue that sort of thing. But once my schedule opens up a little bit more, I will get back into doing it. And once I get my certification, I want to, you know, do IT in this company and say, like, hey, look, I'm IT is my passion. I know my worth. I know I could get paid more money. I'd rather work IT in here. If they don't take me, okay, no problem. I'll go move somewhere else where they could pay me a little more money for the IT certification, and I'll get eventually. So
You
yeah,
know,
that's pretty much been the
given
gist of it.
given your big update, and I'm glad you're in the situation in your life where you're happy to find a job where it's at least
Mm-hmm.
a lot more steady, a lot more stable when it comes to like what you're looking for, when it comes to your commute. There was an article that came out, I guess it was this week, maybe last week. um I'm looking it up now, but it's something along the lines. Oh, here it is. It came out the 18th of October. Americans
Mm-hmm.
reclaim 60 million commuting hours in remote work perk. So what does that mean? Well, given all the Americans who have, worked from home, if you take all their commutes and put them as an average, Americans have saved 60 million hours as a nation in this year alone when it comes to just commuting to and from work.
Yeah.
So, and that's quite bonkers. I know in your previous some of your other security jobs, there was times where you were working almost an hour away, and that was quite a bit of a drive. Sometimes you needed to go somewhere where going to and from might have took you like 45 minutes or 30 minutes. Like it was a long commute, and that's one of the things that that doesn't bother me too much about the commute. At least when it comes to commuting, I get to have my own thoughts. I get to do like what I want to do when it comes to just like sorting myself out. It's my me time. Sure, it might be a stressful me time in a way where I get to be alone in my own car, think to myself, listen to podcasts, listen to music, listen to anything, let my mind wander about the things that need to be wandered about. All that being said, though, there are times where, especially my last job, commuting to work, let's see, it was a 45-minute to get there, but it was an hour and 35 to get back home because of the traffic and all that stuff. So that's when I usually worked
Mm-hmm.
overtime, so the traffic doesn't hit me as hard. And in aviation, overtime is essentially given to you willingly because there's so much work to be done and all that stuff. They don't really beg for it, but no, actually they do beg for it, but they can't really force you to take it. But all that being said, 60 million hours of time being saved by America, being stuck in traffic, just because just the traffic, and how are workers, American workers, using that time that they managed to reclaim, getting more rest, spending more time with their family, doing picking up hobbies. Surprisingly enough,
Getting shit done that you normally don't have time to do because you're busy at work and driving to and from work.
right, and also getting healthier. That's also one of the things that that's really crazy. So it's one of those things that obviously when as an adult you start to take for granted your time when it comes to like just commuting, right? You just see it as a an ends to a mean. It's
Yeah.
what you have to do because you need to get to your workplace to get that bread, to get that shmoney. But it's one of those things that 60 million hours is great, and obviously not all work can. And not all jobs can do work from home. Obviously, in my industry, in aviation, you can't quite do that the way I'm doing it. So I have considered picking up coding, and all that stuff, and staying in the aviation field while doing something that I can do from home. Obviously, not saying because I want to be lazy or anything. It's just one of those things that working from home's benefits. The only benefit I see mainly is the commute itself, because there's something else.
I mean, I could.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
You can go ahead.
I could give this as an attestment. Let's do a comparison between like distance to travel with every job I worked at, right?
Yeah.
Security. I worked overnight. The highways aren't usually that bad. Going to work, it was pretty much a straight drive. Yeah, they're
Right.
rarely, very, very, very rarely there'll be like an accident or some form of construction that prevents me from like straight shotting all the way to
Because that
work,
was a
right?
night shift job, right?
yes, it was a night shift job, and I knew the area, and I knew that it's like, okay, I know the drive here from 10 to 11 is pretty much a straight shot. But while I'm driving, I'm looking at the traffic coming back, and I see like all these cars like piled up, right?
Yeah.
And I never complained about it. That's why, like, when if I came late, it's usually because I was lazy or I just got caught up with getting something to eat or something like that. It's very rarely that like something will happen. I think like the worst that's ever happened was that like the entire highway closed down and you had to like take this really awkward exit to get off of the highway and you had to drive to a part of a city I'd never been to before. It was a complete shit show. But I knew that like, okay, the drive going and going there is not as bad, right? Every morning. Every single time, whenever I leaving work, I'd be like, man, this overnight thing sucks. I'm dead tired. I'm so fucking tired. I don't want to work overnight anymore. And then as I'm driving back home, it's still a straight shot. I see all the traffic going to the city that I'm leaving, and I realize like, yeah, that's why I don't want to work during the day shift, because I don't want to leave my house, which is already a 45-minute drive, and then have to factor with all this fucking traffic. So
Yeah.
that's why I like that. I like the fact that it's like, okay, it's a straight shot. I don't got to worry about traffic, because traffic is such an uncontrollable element. You can have people that are super friendly, super understanding. They know how to drive. They knew how to like let people in and out. And then you get people who are just complete jackasses that just want to like be like, if I'm late, I'm going to make everybody late kind of thing. And so there's that. The second job I worked at, they said, hey, we want you to work 11 to 7 initially. And I'm like, okay, perfect. It's the same song and dance. I know this area. I know by 11, it's an easy shot to get to work from here. And it was technically closer, not by a lot, but it was closer to my house. And I thought, okay, that's even better for me. And then as I started working there, they're like, oh, we want you to come in at 10 a.m. and then 9 a.m. and then 8 a.m. And I'm like, and then I'm realizing that like that one little hour difference of time they expect me to come in, now I got to deal with all this extra traffic. And I remember just being so fucking pissed about it, because they told me initially like, hey, we want you to work only 11 to 7. And I'm like, okay, cool. All that's perfect for me. And then as they started like making me come in earlier and earlier and earlier, that's when like the traffic would get worse. It's like fucking gridlock. And I got so fed up one day where I'm just like, hey, look, guys, I don't mean to be a dick or anything, but like, look, you initially hired me to only work 11 to 7. I know this route. It's much easier for me to make it here. I don't like dealing with traffic, because traffic could either be super easy or incredibly frustrating. I don't like it. Plus, I already hate the job, and that's like one thing I don't want to be in, is be in traffic, going to a job that I'm not looking forward to working at.
Yeah.
Not, you're saying about like, oh, like I like being with my thoughts. Like, well, all in my thoughts, like, God, I fucking hate this job, and I fucking hate this traffic. Fuck this shit. Why am I here?
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, that makes sense. It's just one of those things that I can remove my like. I'm not saying everyone's like me or everyone can do it like me. It's just one of those things where um I've never been the type of gentleman who likes to take leisurely drives to clear my head out. I've never been that type of guy.
I've done that. I've done that. When I couldn't sleep, I used to do that all the time. I used to do that. I would like take literally all one road and drive as far as I could, and then if I turn back around and turn back to my house.
Right,
and like really like late and early in the morning.
I get that. I get why people would want that. Your brain is working on autopilot to make the car move forward. You're not actively doing it, but like it's one of those things that obviously if you're driving 8 hours versus just sitting still for 8 hours, it's two completely different things, because driving takes some sort of mental energy from you. All that being said, I've always, when it came to me driving, I needed to have like some sort of like purpose. Like, I'm going to this spot. I've never liked just randomly just driving around. Because I need.
Well, your purpose is to clear your mind, so maybe that's the way you gotta look at it, like that.
I get that, but like when it comes to like the destination itself, like I'm not gonna just drive around with no end, like end date, like end of the course being
End goal.
Right, there is no end goal. I'm just be like, what's the point? Like I suck myself out.
Right.
But given like that, I had long commutes to work, to and from work. All that being said, I use that opportunity, just to clear my head. Now, sure, all that being said, there are notorious drivers here all throughout Florida that we know and love that will cause will break that calmness, will break that, will break that that escape, I guess, when it comes to getting lost in your thoughts or just clearing out your mind. But obviously that's during rush hour traffic, so I can't really quite complain so much about that. But all that being said, it's one of the few things, I guess, I have like the good that's in the bad. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that I can at least be happy about that I can use that time to think about. And my autistic self loves to think about a lot of random things. So it's a great way to sort my minds. But I'm obviously um a different pickle
Well,
in that jar. So it's one of.
well, it's
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
uh, no, I was just gonna finish up my point I was saying about like commuting and stuff. So then when I worked from home, uh, sorry about that.
Hmm.
What was he saying?
About your commute.
Was it? Yeah, commute. Sorry, we had someone distracting earlier.
Yeah.
Um, Commute. Right. So my third job was at, well, not my third job, but like my job before the current one I had, it was work from home. So what I would used to do is I would just wake up like 10 minutes before my shift started and just be like, all right, time to go to work. But even though I hated it, right, I just would just be like, okay, cool. I don't have to, dress up. I don't have to get, I could just work in my fucking pajamas. So that's what I
Right.
used to do. I would just go straight to work, wear my pajamas, and just be chill with that. And yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. And if you want to get into like the wage cucky argument and things like that, or to say that like, oh, your job doesn't pay you for all your commuting and your traffic and all that stuff. So technically, even though you getting dressed to go to work is work and yada yada yada, and you have to spend like 2 hours to get ready and eat breakfast and all that shit. You could make the argument about that. Like, yeah, it sucks where it's like, damn, I'm driving to work for 2 hours and I'm not even getting paid for it. But what can you really do about it?
Yeah. I will say though, this has been going on longer than I thought we would have done, but I'm really happy we can have this conversation.
Yeah, we should move on afterwards
But
after
I
we're done
will
with that.
say, when it comes to reading this article, because while you were talking, I was reading a little bit about it. Yeah, it is a very healthy um update for Americans. Obviously, it's one of those things that like that's great for a lot of people. Likewise, it's one of those things that uh what do you call this? It's one of those things that statistically there's a how much you enjoy your job is how long the commute is as well. If it's something I think that takes 15 minutes, you'll enjoy that job more. If it gets to the 30-minute range, that's when you reach the yes or no
Aggravated.
category. The yes or no category, right? If it takes 30 minutes, it won't be too crazy. You're like you won't be like unsatisfied, but you won't be uber happy either. Anything past 30 minutes is when you're like, I really hate this job type of thing. So it's one of those things that it's interesting that that Americans are able to become a lot more healthier mentally speaking just because of work from home, and that society as a whole, at least in Western countries, have become a more work from home type of thing. My only concern, it's more so that it goes into different things like schools, because I've done plenty of school districts that couldn't do school from home because there is no computers to give out, laptops to give out, tablets to give out. And some of these houses, surprising to some people, but that's just the divide in America. For some people don't have internet at their house. It's just a normal thing. So going through all that stuff, I'm glad this infrastructure is changing to allow more people to have access to internet, more access for people to get things done from home itself. So one step at a time. Obviously, it's one of those things that that politically speaking, I'm not trying to be all I'm not going to talk about politics in this podcast, but it's more so it's what I guess strive for in that sense. Because working from home, just reading this article, I'm like, dang, all we need is a good infrastructure for internet. I would gladly vote for that, and more people would have a better life just in living in their house, working, and then that would also work out with someone like me, someone like Daniel, someone like Kenny, who drive and commute to go to a brick and mortar place to work, which less cars on the street means less traffic. Whoop de doo, it's a big old thing. So yeah, I'll end with that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So that's pretty much the gist of it. It's just work still needs to be done. Just like how we need to keep doing the podcast, and that's why things just come up and we just can't do it. We all have scheduling conflicts. But enough about us though. Let's actually talk about what's been happening though in the last like 2 weeks though.
A
So I
lot.
guess we should start with the two. Well, should we talk about the Bayonetta thing first, or do you want to talk about
Well,
the announcements?
if you don't mind, I would like to like shotgun some small things, and then we could talk about the bigger things we actually are more interested in. Because obviously these
Sure.
are just information that people were talking about. Obviously the whole TwitchCon thing that happened. the two people that were injured
The
at
injury.
TwitchCon with the foam pit. People were talking about like negligence. People were talking about, oh, they signed a waiver so they don't have a claim. I want everyone to know, and I'll keep this short. Regardless if you sign a waiver or not, if they're negligent about the structure or how they set up everything, you can still sue for that, and then you can nullify the waiver itself. We saw the foam pit. There was concrete. Usually, there's not supposed to be concrete, just bare concrete out there. People would put padding on
It's
it. People
supposed
would
to be
put
padding.
foam, right,
Hmm.
so on and so forth. So at least she's recovering. She got surgery. She's doing better, so on and so forth. The girl who got her knee dislocated was the second girl. She's doing better as well. To move on,
Are they
this
pursuing legal action?
they have to, the 100%. I'm pretty sure they have to. They're probably soliciting lawyers or something like that. But
But
that's
like, have they said they're doing it, or it's like implied? Because I get it. Like most people, when doing legal action, they don't announce it ahead of time. But
it's
it's like I'm
probably
curious if
implied.
any.
Everyone's telling him to go do it, but that's it for that update, I guess. Another update. Everyone talks about again with Twitch, this whole Amaranth thing. Everyone knows her in a derogatory term as the richest ethot, which I guess if you want to call her that, whatever. She doesn't care what you call her, but she has been hardworking with her career and all that stuff. And it turns out we know why, because she was essentially pimped out by her husband, so on and so forth. It's one
Husband.
of those things that has led this new wave of drama that's happening. That's been happening for a while. Earlier in the month or last month, it was this whole gambling thing, this whole XQC thing, this whole drama thing with this house about someone checking their polls, but it was actually going like touching their breast, like all this other stuff. It's just Twitch drama. Obviously, it's one of those things that will get popular because a lot of people will funnel to it, especially if you're in that sphere. So at least with Amaranth, she was able to get like help and all that stuff. All that's great. That's awesome. We have things with metaverse that people are like making fun of metaverse. That their stocks are,
Zuckerberg has legs.
yeah. They finally have legs. It's like the like when everyone was going crazy when the Nintendo introduced arms and legs to the Wii characters, to the Mii characters. I mean, because they were just hands and feet, mostly just hands. Um,
I mean, no. I mean, I personally like Rayman, so I don't know why everyone lost their
that's
shit
true.
over that.
That's true. But yeah, people are speculating like, is metaverse just failing? Like what's happening? There is another thing. I'll cover this just quickly, just something small about people being unhappy about Chris Pratt's Mario voice. I don't care about it. It's just one of
Oh
those
yeah,
things.
the movie. Look, I don't even care about the movie discussion. I'll say this right now: I am really excited for the Super Mario movie.
Yeah.
I am legitimately looking forward to it.
Yeah, it seems like one of those things where like I hope it does well, because we're on a track record of video games having great movies or great shows. We have the Witcher series, we have the Pikachu Detective movies, or movie, and then we have the Sonic movies. Like all three of them have done they broke the status quo where whenever there is a movie being used or a show being used to portray a video game, something with video games, it usually goes bad, or with an anime. But I'm glad these three are at least the biggest of the outliers, and I hope Mario can be just that. Obviously, Jack Black is doing a great job as being Bowser. Everything seems clean. The animation seems amazing. So I don't think they're going to produce
Is
subpar.
it still being done by Illumination though?
I
I don't
don't
think it is,
I
right?
don't know, but the only saving grace, at least in my opinion, that I have is that Nintendo's overseeing a lot of these things. So Nintendo likes to make good content, at least for the most part. So all that being said, they want to make sure at least this movie doesn't screw them over as well. So um other than that, I don't know who's still producing it. Then there's this whole,
It looks like it is still Illumination producing it. It's Universal that's publishing. It's distributing it.
okay, yeah, okay,
So it is still Illumination. Yeah, because I keep hearing this rumbling that I thought that like Nintendo was gonna open up their animated studio because like they didn't like Illumination, but I guess they just said fuck it, we'll just overlook it. But yeah, I really like it. I think that I don't really have the biggest opinion of Illumination studio movies.
mhm,
Um, and I was kind of hesitant when they took the project, but as long as it doesn't get like sequel-thon like a bunch like their movies,
yeah.
I think we're in good hands.
Yeah, that's true. I would agree as well. And then I guess the last thing I want to cover, at least the
Hmm.
last thing I when it comes to like what we normally cover, is like Overwatch 2 is now being playable now, and people are like, not, they don't really care about it anymore at this point, because having 5 players instead of 6 players per match, and making tanks super overpowered, people are just, it's changing up the meta, it's changing up everything. It's one of those things where people are like, I kind of don't care anymore about what do you call it? They don't really care about Overwatch at this point anymore because it's essentially just Overwatch 1.1. Honestly, so people don't really they aren't so uh excited for it as well,
Excited, yeah.
right? And it's one of those
I
things that
played. I
uh,
tried to play Overwatch 2 at launch, but the menu was really good looking, but that was about it. Once the queues were finally opened up, I literally played the game for 10 minutes just to try out the new characters, and I'm like, all right, there you go. But yeah, Overwatch 2 is just an overglorified update, and that's
oh,
about it.
right, and update to one of our to our previous discussion that we said in our podcast, on our previous episode, the whole loss. There's this lawsuit about this chess drama. Simply put it, the man who was accused of cheating, who defeated Carl Magnus in the no, was it Carl? Whatever.
The
His name is
smoking butt plug story.
yeah, so he's suing Magnus, he's suing Chess.com, he's suing other people for $100 million. He won't get $100 million for people who don't know how the legal system works. You just make a claim that what you're
Yeah,
seeking
of
for,
course.
and then obviously you can get more or less depending on how the jury go, like how the trial goes and all that stuff. And I think lastly there's I think there was Scorn was released, and people are saying it's a very mid game with great visuals and great sound effects, but the gameplay itself is mid as hell. So
That's
um
what I keep hearing too. Yeah, I guess I was more excited about the art about the game than the actual game itself.
honestly, same. And I like it. I watched a couple live streams about it, and it seems interesting. Like when it comes to like just looking at how much detail went into that, but I feel like they could have done so much more with that technology, with that development style, but they didn't. So it is what it is. But I guess that's
There was a
uh-huh.
there is a game if you really want to get retro here. If you really want something like based on H.R. Geiger's art, because clearly that's what Scorn's based off of.
Yeah,
There was an old MS DOS like point and click game called Dark Seed. It's still only on MS DOS. I don't think it ever got released on Windows, but I would kill for that game to get re-released. It was one of those point and click FMV games back in the day in the early 90s, I want to say, where some of them were just batshit insane. Like Harvester is just fucking crazy. But I wouldn't mind like seeing Darkseid get re-released again with that art style. But unfortunately, GOG hasn't like really picked it up. If you want something more slower pace and a little bit more puzzle solving, that might be your thing. But yeah, I mean, aside that though, unless the only other arguments like, well, what other HR Geiger game can I play? Like, we'll play any Alien game at that
yeah,
point.
yeah. So I guess that's it for like shotgunning some updates. We were going to talk about two specific things, which were
Well,
essentially
three technically.
yeah, three. So you want to hit it off?
Yeah, let's start with the Silent Hill thing. Yeah, so let's definitely talk about Silent Hill. Guys, ladies and gentlemen, I'm crazy to announce you this, but Konami realized they were a game studio and they made good IPs back in the day. And the only reason why is because look, guys, I want to remind you what the company we're dealing with here. This is the same company that said during the Castlevania 30th anniversary, there was like all this hype, like, oh my God, are they going to make a new game? Are they going to re-release something? You know, the
Yeah.
Netflix series, it's kind of good, da 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 da. And they said, hey guys, don't worry. You know, we want you to have Castlevania deep inside your pockets. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the official Castlevania NFT. And man, did that fucking suck. I was like, wow, literally the worst thing. Konami could literally walk in, drop their pants, drop a deuce on the floor, and be like, here you go. This is what we think about Castlevania. Like, well, at least it's a physical object that I could touch. You know, there's some corn in there, but you know, better than a fucking NFT. It's in the blockchain, guys. We got this. And like, God, fucking damn it. Like the most tone deaf announcement I ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit hesitant when they said the Silent Hill announcement because remember, this is the same fucking studio said, hey, Team Silent, yeah, they disbanded. Send the game out to a bunch of Western studios that don't really understand theming and they really like to overglorify Pyramid Head because most of them want to fuck them. At least that's what I know in my social circles. And don't get me wrong, some games are good. Some of them were bad. I still personally think Shattered Memories was okay. The last game, I forgot it was called. It was the one that you play as the prisoner. Oh, Downpour. Was actually pretty good. It's just that at launch it was really bad because it was the studio was working with the Unreal Engine at the time. And remember, this is like late Unreal Engine, early PS3. Let me rephrase it. Late Unreal Engine, new
Mm-hmm.
to developers on the PlayStation 3. As you can imagine, it wasn't really going to play as well.
Right.
I just think that it was actually a pretty decent game. It's just nowhere near as good as like the Team Silent games, right? So when Konami said, hey, we're going to do a big Silent Hill announcement, I had zero expectations, but I remembered that I forgot about it completely. I pulled up my phone, like, oh, the Silent Hill stream started. So I started the stream, and I was at work. I was literally leaving work, and I was on my phone, and the first thing they announced, let's get this out of the way. Silent Hill 2 is getting a remake. And the most important thing about that is the fact that who's developing the remake. Because I don't this has been the biggest point of contention. I think generally speaking, people are pretty excited for Silent Hill 2, mainly people who've never played Silent Hill 2, right? Like they knew of Silent Hill 2, they know the story, they know the Pyramid Head, mainly because they want to fuck them, and mainly like the story of it. Because that's what interests me about Silent Hill 2 was the story and the characters, right? The main point of contention was that the development team for this game isn't Konami in-house, it's Blooper Team. Now Blooper Team is the guys who made Layers of Fear, right? In the in the uptake of like indie horror games at this point. Blooper Team made Layers of Fear, and they also made The Observer, and they also made let me see here, they also made I think it's called The Revenant. Let me see here, Blooper Team. I know they made The Medium. There we go. I remember word about The Medium. They also made the Layers of Fear games, Observer, the Blair Witch game, and that's about it. As far as like their horror catalog goes, they've definitely have dabbled into it. But generally speaking, from the word I can get, oh look, they're owned by Tencent. That's interesting. Blooper Team is what most people consider like a B team. Like they're like a team that makes pretty good horror games, or at least decent ones. The point of contention though is that people are really scared is how Blooper Team is going to write Silent Hill 2. Because apparently though, I don't know the context of it. Apparently people have been telling me that the Medium didn't really handle like mentally what's the word I want to use, mentally scarred people really well, or at least they didn't like handle it very appropriately. And Silent Hill 2 is entirely a cast of people that are completely fucked, like they're mentally like screwed because something traumatic happened to them, or they're bad people, or yada yada yada. So that kind of makes me worried, because when I was rewatching the Silent Hill 2 trailer, because I watched it a handful of times, I will say this though, I think the world itself, like the aesthetic and generally speaking, like everything around them looks pretty good. I'm not the biggest fan of James's face, and I hate to say this, but does anyone get like a soy jack look from this guy?
I I can see why you think that.
Because like, okay, and here's the thing that like it also bothers me though. Like I get it, we all know like the big twist about Silent Hill 2. Spoiler alert for those who haven't played Silent Hill 2. Marcos, do you want me to tell you, or do you want me to keep you in the
I
dark?
have not played anything, but you could go right ahead.
Okay, so basically, like the big twist is that like James goes to Silent Hill because he gets a letter from his dead wife saying like, "Oh, I'm waiting for you in that relentless dream. I still see that town, Silent Hill." Quote, trademark, Konami, copyright. Basically, he gets a letter from his dead wife saying like, "Hey, I'm at Silent Hill. Go visit me." And of course, James is a mentally disturbed guy, because we later found out why he holds a lot of regret towards his wife and stuff like that. He's just like, "Oh, I can't, I don't believe her because like she's dead. How can it?" Like literally, he says it word for word in the original game. He says, "No dead person could write a letter and mail it," essentially, right?
Right.
And but James is such a mentally distraught person. He just lost his wife. He's really depressed. He just says he wants to know the truth of the answer, right? So you go throughout Silent Hill, you go through the resort, you see all the spooky shit going on. You run into a bunch of colorful cast of people that are dealing with their own traumas and shit like that, and they don't see the monsters, but you do. And the monsters are representing of James's problems and psyche, whatever. We later find out that James goes to the resort that Mary and him both spent time together in, and he sees the tape that what happened. So it turns out that James killed his wife because his wife had a incurable disease. She was super mean, very vitriol, but obviously though she's sick, she can't like, that's just the sad situation of everything. And James, wanting to give her a mercy killing, he suffocates her. He puts a pillow over her head just to like put her out of her misery. But then we find out that James had a little bit of resentment towards her, where like he admits it, like in one of the endings, like, "Look, I'm sorry for what I did, but I also did it because I was mad at you. Like I'd be lying to myself if I said I did it for you."
Yeah.
So the reason why I bring this up though is that like in the trailer you see James is already, his hands are shaking and it looks like he's already ridden with guilt. And the reason why I bring that up though is that some people might play Silent Hill 2, 3 and the PS2 games and maybe the PlayStation 1 game and say, "Oh, the voice acting looks really bad." On first glance, yes, it does look really bad. It does look really unprofessional and stuff like that. But let's look at it like in this context, though. There's a scene where James goes to the graveyard and meets Laura, and Laura has her own bag of trauma and troubles, and she's went through, right? They talk really off. Like, they're like, "Hey, I'm going to Silent Hill." I'm sorry, I'm a little bit lost. And Laura looks at him and says, lost? Like, really weird, right? And it's
Okay.
like they're really slow. They're talking like really calm, but like really like like they're kind of like hiding something from each other. And like it looks really awkward. But then when you think about it, like, oh, these are two mentally fucked people right now having a conversation. That's how mentally fucked people would talk if they're dealing with trauma and shit. They're not super like casual and be like, oh, how you doing? I'm doing great, you know? And that's like the thing though, is that there's a little bit of like this awkwardness towards it, but then it kind of works in a way that's like it's so awkward to the point that it gets really good in the reverse, right?
Hmm.
And I'm not saying I hate the new voice actor. I'm sure the new voice actor is going to be fine, but I wanted to still keep that awkwardness in. I don't want it to sound like, generic, high budget, because we're so used to like video games nowadays having like really good voice acting that people forget about the early awkward stages between the PS1, N64, and PS2 era where voice acting was still a new thing. Like video game developers weren't like, paying millions of dollars to Liam Neeson say, hey, voice the dad in Fallout 3, This was a time where like people didn't quite know how to translate like Japanese to English to then make it sound right in English as well. And the reason why I bring that up is because like in the trailer, I know the quote that James is talking about, and it sounds way too badass for what it is. It's literally verbatim. What the line is basically the line he says to fight Pyramid Head, where he's just like, I know who you are. I'm not afraid of you anymore. I'm willing to accept this, yada yada yada. In the original game, it sounded more like uncertain. Like James was like, I know what you are, and I'm not afraid of you. And yeah, it sounds stilted, but that makes sense because James is still mentally fucked. But in the trailer, he sounds like a badass, and I'm just like, I don't really want that though. Um, so yeah, anyways though, long rambling aside though, I look forward to the Silent Hill 2 remake, and the good news is that yes, it's coming to PC. It's only a limited console exclusive on PlayStation 5. I found that pretty goddamn hilarious. I was like, okay, cool, I don't have to worry about that. But hey, look, the way I look at it is it's still apparently like overlooked by some of the people that originally worked with this game. I look forward to it. I mean, they got my boy Akira Yamaoka. I love this guy's music. It's so fucking good, even if it's just a bunch of noise, because it really captures the Silent Hill vibe and everything. So yeah, I look forward to the Silent Hill 2 remake. I don't know if you want to like quickly touch on that, and then we could talk about like all the other Silent Hill related announcements.
I'm not. I've always. What was it? I've only ever been involved with Silent Hill when it came to the meme. What was that one meme where like it was used as a
The
format
dog
or
ending.
huh?
The dog ending.
No. Well, yes, but
Oh,
not
like Chad James.
no. There's a song from I think Silent Hill 3. Anyways, it's it's a zoom in of this dude from Megamind, the nerdy dude from Megamind he gets powers at the end of the movie, and it's a zoom
Yeah,
in
it's
of
like
his
there's no Easter
face,
egg.
and then it
Yeah.
plays the song a Silent Hill song. That's like I've only ever known like Silent Hill and some of these horror games through memes, right? It's never been like because I played them. Um,
Hmm.
Likewise, like I told you prior to like recording today's podcast that it's one of those games that like I know some of my friends played it, I just never had a chance to play it type of thing. And
Hmm.
when it came to like uh what games I wanted to buy, it was more so like a decision between well, my brother and I need to both agree on because we didn't have a choice in the matter to buy any game we really wanted to. So playing Silent Hill, it's just one of those things
Yeah,
that
that's one of those things why I hate like when people say, "Oh, you didn't play this video game? Oh, you never watched this movie?" Like, yeah, I'm a kid. I can't fucking buy anything. What the fuck?
yeah, that's true. So when it came to Silent Hill, it's just one of those games that I never really quite played. Likewise to Resident Evil, which is something else we're gonna talk about as well. But it's just one of those things that I just never quite played. Not because I didn't want to, it's just I never had a
Do you
chance
like
to.
horror games though?
Yeah, of course I do. It's just one of those things that
Okay.
obviously it's as time went on, I only saw snippets and I only saw like what do you call it uh gameplay of it, but I've never actually played it. It's just one of those things. That's just how my life ended up being.
If you want my take on it, though, as far as my Silent Hill repertoire, I think I briefly played Silent Hill 2, and it's kind of understandable, like, why the original Silent Hill games are kind of difficult, because they're not super easy games to emulate on PS2 emulation for a couple years, if my memory serves me right. There was a PC release of the game back in the day that actually had the uncensored cutscenes and stuff like that, but of course, it's incredibly out of print, and it's not available. Ironically, though, out of the weirdness of GOG at the time, where they announced, like, hey, by the way, we're re-releasing Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 on PC, like the original PC, if you know what I'm talking about, like with GOG, where it's like they'll take like old PC games and then they just like patch it in, they make it work like instantly out of the box. You know, if you like try to, like, for example, I try to play like Rayman 2 from Uplay, and Ubisoft didn't bother to put any patches or anything to make the game like run on a Windows machine. So as soon as I start playing like Rayman 2, like the resolution's off. I can't change it to 1080p because 1080p wasn't an option, and it's like, what the fuck? So now I learned myself, like, okay, if I'm gonna buy any like really old game, either I have to look up the patches or I have to go ahead and buy from GOG, because GOG at least will install those fan-made mods just to make the games run better. The good news is, though, is that Silent Hill 2 did have a PC release, like I said, and you could get this thing called the Enhanced Edition, which is basically like, hey, we fixed the broken PC release. Well, broken as in like it's broken. Well, it's kind of broken back then, but it was also broken when you're playing on modern computers. That is really good. It's actually like a really good way to play. I would say play the HD collections on PS3 and 360, but we all know those were a shit show of a fucking port. So yeah, that kind of killed any motivation for people to go back to play Silent Hill 2 and 3. I did own Silent Hill 3 on the PS2, and I briefly played it, which is a funny story about that. So at one point I gave like a bunch, I think I like gave like a PS2 to a kid or something, and I didn't realize that the PS2 had Silent Hill 3 still in the fucking system. So that poor kid's probably playing Silent Hill 3 right now. Great fun trauma, great character building. As far as like my first Silent Hill experience, unfortunately I didn't play the Team Silent games. I didn't play. Oh wait, going back to the GOG thing before I forget. So while Konami and GOG released Resident Evil, Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 on PC with the custom mods and everything like that to play the game just fine, they randomly also released Silent Hill 4 The Room as a PC release on GOG out of nowhere. And I was like, oh, so you didn't bother making ports for Silent Hill 2 and 3, but you did straight to 4. Okay, whatever, you know, just go look up Silent Hill 2 on some whatever website of your choice and just download the enhanced mod and just play that. So I'm looking forward to that, because this game, obviously the remake isn't going to be coming out anytime soon. So the way I look at it is I'm going to play the enhanced edition and then play the remake and see like how both of them hold up. Because you got to remember, like, if I tell you the story of Silent Hill 2, it may not be that great, or maybe we just only play the game of Silent Hill 2 without any context. It may not be as great as well, but you got to remember that Silent Hill 2 was originally a PS2 game with a PS2 in mind, with the graphics and textures and everything in mind. That's why when you make everything all pretty, you know, you still had to use like your interpretation and your memory and stuff like that. Like, there's going to be a lot of shit in the background you're not going to understand because the textures were too low to really make a definitive explanation, right? So at least you have those options. But my first Silent Hill game was actually Homecoming, which was the first Silent Hill game made by Westerners. I think it might have been after Origin, and I enjoyed it. I didn't like the ending, and I felt like the way how they tried to like retroactively wrap it back to Silent Hill was kind of confusing, but it was okay, like nothing bad. My personal Silent Hill game actually is probably not a popular choice amongst the community, but I really like Shattered Memories. It's probably because it's such a good game that it doesn't need to be a Silent Hill. Like, that's like the big complaint that people tell me. It's like, it's a good horror game, but not a really good Silent Hill game, because there's no combat, there's no fighting. It's just only exploring, walk around with a flashlight, you know, figure out. And the story was really good. I really liked the story. And I think that that's probably what most people hold it up against, because it was not treated as like a remake, but it was treated like a reimagining of Silent Hill 1, but it really has nothing to do with Silent Hill 1. You know, it's more like psychological and all these like neat little features, like, oh, if you paint like a house, because throughout the game you're in like in this therapy session, and the therapist will be like, oh, paint this house. And if you paint the house, the cutscene will play you running up to the house, and it's the house painted exactly how you wanted it, because that's the way it's fucking with you. You're trying to figure out like, wait, am I playing as James or am I playing someone else? Who the fuck is in the therapy session? Really cool. I like the game, but I can see why a lot of people may not like particularly like it. And I didn't play like any of the other like HD era Silent Hill games, but I did play a little bit of Silent Hill 2 and 3. But I would like to play the original at some point.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess we should wrap up the Silent Hill thing, and then we could get to the next gaming thing announcement. Here we go. Where is it? All right. So yeah, that's even the craziest part. So I thought, okay, they're remaking Silent Hill 2. That's an easy bet. You know, Silent Hill 2 is such a well-known game on the internet. I think people are going to do it. I hope Blooper Team doesn't drop the ball on this. I think that a lot of people are unfortunately going to play Silent Hill 2 remake and judge the Silent Hill 2 based on the remake itself. I would just tell people like, hey, you know, if you can take, you know, if you have a decent computer, figure out a way how to play Silent Hill 2 Enhanced Edition and just play that so you could get your first real experience, and then play Silent Hill 2 remake, and then we'll go from there. Silent Hill Towerfall. Didn't read much about this one. Let me see here. It is. Let me see, because honestly though, I know they announced like 4 other things, but I think straight up announcing the Silent Hill 2 remake was like literally showing their biggest card ever. Okay, so apparently it is a Silent Hill game. Okay, there's not much really to say about it. It's more like pretty weird. Silent Hill Ascension. This is a apparently a live real-time interactive series where fans watch and make decisions together. So I guess there's some sort of, I guess this is some form of like streaming content, or I guess it's supposed to be like a live thing where like you actively, you know, think about like Twitch plays Pokemon. Let's just go with that. And the craziest thing is though is that they are announcing a brand new Silent Hill game called Silent Hill F. And it's going to be developed by Neo Bards Entertainment. Apparently these guys made the Resident Evil multiplayer game, RE-verse. I think that was part of Silent Hill not Silent Hill, Resident Evil 3 remake. I think that's kind of interesting. Like the same developers that are working on the Resident Evil are also working on a Silent Hill game. Don't really have much on that. I don't think they showed like really much of a trailer. I think they just only showed off a bunch of stills for it. So we'll have to wait and see. Overall, I'll say this though. I look forward to seeing Silent Hill 2 remake, but I'm gonna play the original first and then make my opinion on it. And I just hope it doesn't bomb. And I hope that a lot of people give the classic games a shot first before they play this remake.
Right.
Because I've seen a lot of people are tweeting about that. Like, oh, I can't wait this to be my first Silent Hill. I'm like, I think you should play like the actual first Silent Hill games before you play the remakes. Just to get like a fair judgment of the franchise.
Of course.
But yeah, I guess speaking about spooky shit though, I guess we could finish this up with another horror game announcements. That Resident Evil Village, man. I'm really glad that Resident Evil is doing really well. Apparently Resident Evil Village is doing really well, that they're adding some DLC, a new expansion content, the Winter's expansion. You basically play as, spoiler alert, you play as Ethan's daughter, so that's going to be kind of cool. They added, the funniest detail is they added a third person mode, obviously though, because, you know, going from tank-based Resident Evil to over-the-shoulder Resident Evil to then first-person Resident Evil. Some people probably like, well, what about third-person Resident Evil? I want to go back to that. My favorite little detail is that they're like, oh, we're adding a third-person mode for Resident Evil Village. And I like this detail where obviously, though, you never see Ethan's face. So they asked him, like, oh, well, what happens if they turn the camera to see Ethan's face? And the director just let them say, oh, Ethan will just look away. So you can never see his face.
Nice. Get wrecked.
So I thought that was pretty hilarious. I'm surprised that Capcom is really banking down on this like Resident Evil multiplayer game called RE-verse. It's basically like, imagine like Mercenaries mode, but like a little bit more like Dead by Daylight. And it's funny because originally it was only like you only could get it if you bought the Resident Evil 3 remake new, but now they're selling it like individually. But I think it's a little bit overpriced. I don't know. I haven't personally played it. Then again, I haven't played the R3 remake. But damn, they're really man. I'm looking at this trailer right now. They really want this thing to be the next big multiplayer experience. But hey, I don't blame them. I mean, like they gave away their IP to, you know, fucking Dead by Daylight to add Albert Wesker, and now Silent Hill has Pyramid Head on it.
Dude, the game has become,
that's kind of funny.
Well, Pyramid Head's been around for a while in Dead by Daylight, but Wesker, playing against Wesker in Dead by Daylight has been so fucking fun. Like it's one of those things that like. It's like I've seen a lot more people playing Dead by Daylight now more than ever, and it's awesome. One of the great things about the remakes, or not even the remakes, but to start off with Village, it's gotten so popular prior to its release thanks to the memes, thanks to the big mommy milker memes and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
And it's become such a big mainstream thing that, like, just through memes alone, the game was able to see, like, I'm pretty sure it would have been successful on its own. Not saying that memes are the only reason why it was successful. It's just one of those things that you, like the Minion movie got super, super, super popular and it did well in theaters because of, well, the memes. So it's one of those things that, I'm glad, like the market's a bit more volatile when it comes to like what's going to become good or not in the eyes of the culture. Because like as like I watched Morbius, right, and Morbius was it was just memed up up and down, left and right, and I watched it. It wasn't a bad movie. Like I enjoyed it. When it comes to like origin films, and thanks to the memes, I just couldn't stop laughing the entire time on the movie. So I'm glad Resident Evil was able to do good with their games, with the remakes, because obviously the memes, like at least culture, internet culture is behind it as well. So um, I'm pretty sure Resident Evil 4 remake, I believe that was the one that was announced.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
gonna do
Well, they
well.
they didn't they showed it off this time because they just said like, hey, we're doing a Resident Evil 4 remake, which I've been pretty vocal about like my hesitation because I've said this before that like Resident Evil 4 is probably one of the most influential games of all time, especially between the generation of the PS2 to the PS3. Third person, like, over the shoulder shooters, like your fucking Gears of War and everything, clearly taken from Resident Evil 4. And it's one of the most groundbreaking games of all time. I was just so scared because it's like, it's kind of like the same thing how I felt about like when Resident Evil 2 was getting a remake. The question was, how are you going to do it? Are you going to do over the shoulder because that's what Resident Evil was at the time? Or do you go back to what Resident Evil 1 remake was, where they said, hey, no, we're going to, do, the still fixed camera angles and everything like that. But they said, no, we're going to do over the shoulder. And I thought, like, well, how do you remake Resident Evil 4? This game has been ported on literally every device I could think of.
Yeah.
And yet, it's like, it's such a groundbreaking title that makes you wonder, like, does it really need a remake right now? And I was really scared about it, but you know what? I'm kind of looking forward to it. It actually doesn't look bad at all. It looks like it's just a much more nicer, higher polished version of Resident Evil 4. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm not like super excited about it. I mean, like I told Marcos he's never played a Resident Evil game. I think you should just start Resident Evil 4 if you want to know like what makes this franchise so good. And then if you want to go back to play like the classic game, because thankfully other Resident Evil games, at least for modern audiences, are much more easily accessible. Unless you want to get to like the weird spin-offs like Code Veronica or fucking Survivor. You want to talk about that?
I know exactly why it's popular. It's just again and I'm sure some
No,
people
I mean like for as an introduction standpoint, because back then if you want to play Resident Evil, you got to get Resident Evil 1 on the PlayStation,
right,
you got to get Resident Evil
that
2
makes
on the
sense.
PlayStation, and then like, oh, but if you could get Resident Evil 2 on the GameCube, it's actually pretty good. And that's what I'm getting at, is that like nowadays we live in a day and age where like you could buy every Final Fantasy game English translated on Steam just easy. Back in the day you only have Final Fantasy 7 and maybe 8.
Yeah, it's one of those things like I know I would have a good time with not Final Fantasy, but I'm sure I would
Resident
have fun. We have Resident Evil. It's one of those things that like I'm sure I have a good time with it. It's just not one of those things that it's like trying on a new hobby or something new. Obviously, you gotta like break out of your shell of comfort and all that stuff. But I'm at a point where when it comes to
Or if you want to get really interesting, I like to quote this line from Wayne's World. If you remember Wayne's World, where it's like wearing a new pair of underwear. At first, it constricts you, but then it becomes a part of you.
I've never had a problem with new underwear like that.
Yeah, Marcos, because every underwear you ever buy from every store just perfectly fits you.
No, because I get my size and it's always the right size.
Well, I mean, sometimes some underwear you just got to stretch that bitch out a little bit, but then
Yeah,
again,
well,
you don't have
I've never
glorious
like
ass like mine.
I get that. And that's why like when it comes to new clothes, I always throw it in the wash first, and then when it comes out,
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, I've never had that tight feeling because it's always been like a shirt like that's been processed through the freaking washer already. So like, what's the point? But yeah, I get it. It's just one of
But
those
anyways,
things that
back to what we were saying. Yeah,
when it comes to Resident Evil, it's one of those things that like I'm sure I have a great time with it. I mean, it's not that hard to see why. It's just one of the things that I have to get out of like comfort zone, and try new things, obviously, and that's really the crux of it all.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So Resident Evil 4 remake actually looks pretty good. I'm looking forward to that. And I guess so we could wrap up the podcast. We could briefly talk about the Bayonetta situation and why it matters to wait a couple minutes before you immediately start going off on everything. But basically, if you guys don't know, the original voice actress for Bayonetta 1 and 2, went on Twitter basically saying like, hey, I want you. Yeah, well, I think it was 4. Going to detail about like how she felt like she was getting the shaft because Platinum Games essentially only offered her the $4,000 contract so she could do the entire voice acting for Bayonetta, and she's basically like protesting, saying like, hey, you guys shouldn't buy the game, boycott Bayonetta 3 because I feel like I got shafted and yada yada yada. admittedly though, I just canceled my pre-order because I knew I wasn't gonna play Bayonetta 3, and I'm the kind of guy like back in the day where like every Switch announcement would come out, I would put the pre-order in on Amazon because they don't charge you until after the game comes out. So I was like, oh, thanks for reminding me about Bayonetta 3 coming out because I haven't played Bayonetta 2 yet.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I look at it is like, okay, I'm just gonna cancel my pre-order and then I'll buy it later. But basically, a lot of people were pretty much been vocal about like how they don't want to support Bayonetta 3. They want to call out Hideki Kamiya because Hideki Kamiya is, I mean, like calling Hideki Kamiya a douchebag on the internet is like saying the sky is blue. It's like, well, yeah, no fucking shit. I can't read this motherfucker's tweets because I'm an English person on Twitter. He blocks everyone. I'm blocked by him. I never even fucking spoke with the guy. But basically, Hideki Kamiya said like, "Oh no, I have receipts, I can prove it," and yada yada yada. And then eventually, Nintendo or Platinum Games just basically took Kamiya's phone and they said like, "Oh yeah, we don't want to do with you." And basically, they were doing this big cancel program. They're like, oh, we want to bring down Kamiya and Platinum Games, and we need to pay our voice actors and yada 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 better. And please, for the love of God, don't harass the new voice actress just because she took a job offer. That's kind of douchey if he did something like that. But the way I like to look at it, I don't see it as like enough of a reason for me to like not buy the game. Look, and let me get this straight right now. If you're going to still buy Bayonetta 3, even in the midst of all this trouble, I don't care. That's fine. You decide what you want to do. It's your fucking money, right? But if you go out of your way to tell everyone and be like, oh, damn, that sucks you got the shaft, but you know what? I'm just going to buy the game. Nah, here's my, you're a loser kind of thing. Like, that makes you look like a douche. Like, come on, dude. You don't got to be all, you don't even got to do all that extra shit. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not going to, like, dog on you and be like, oh, you bought Bayonetta 3 in the midst of all this controversy. I think that's kind of like really over exaggerating because it's like, hey man, like that doesn't make sense. Like, should I not support the people that also developed the game, that voice acted other characters and yada yada yada? Should I disregard that because they got rid of the voice actors from the original Bayonetta game? Look, the best comparison I can make of this from my personal experience was when MGS5 was coming out, right?
Yeah.
And MGS5, through all its faults and everything, one of the most notorious things was when Hideo Kojima said, like, oh, by the way, David Hayter isn't going to be reprising his role as Snake. We hired Kiefer Sutherland as the voice actor for Snake, or Big Boss in this point, because I won't spoil it. And I remember there was a minor hubbub, it wasn't that big, where basically people saying, oh, if David Hayter's not in Metal Gear Solid 5, I'm not playing this game. This game is dog shit. And I remember, like, Cat Icarus, I haven't watched that guy's content in a while, but he's still doing good. He was saying how, like, it's kind of stupid, where it's like, well, technically speaking, he voiced Big Boss in Metal Gear Solid 3, but he didn't voice Big Boss in MGS4. Did you complain about that? Like, that's so stupid and nearsighted to say, like, oh, just because one person isn't voicing this one character, all of a sudden it's, like, a big issue. And regardless of Kiefer Sutherland's performance, I like to imagine that Kiefer Sutherland charged Konami like per word because that motherfucker barely spoke in that goddamn game. And it's the same situation. So I just looked at that as like, well, yeah, did I cancel my excitement for Metal Gear Solid 5 because of David Hayter? Like, no, because I found out that David Hayter has been very vocal about the idea is like, hey, I love Hideo Kojima. I love the Metal Gear Solid franchise, but I'll tell you one thing though, Hideo's been trying to replace me since MGS3. Like, dead ass. Like, yeah, that's not like, look, he's been very vocal about this after MGS5 because obviously the NDAs were like wrapped up and everything. But he's been telling people that it's like, yeah, like I love the franchise. I like to put in perspective how much this guy loves this franchise. David Hayter took his pay for the Metal Gear Solid 1 remake, the Twin Snakes from the GameCube. He said like, hey, I want you to hire all the original cast members so we could do this legit. And they said, well, we can't do that because we can't afford it. He's like, all right, cut my pay in half and get everybody else into the casting call. He did that out of his own heart because he wanted to keep that authentic original cast on board, right? And he loves his franchise. He's super fan. He's like glad that he's like the voice of Snake, but he's been vocal where like after MGS5, someone asked him flat out like, hey, look, it sucks that you didn't get the role of Snake and and things like that, but would you ever work with Kojima again? He says, no, I wouldn't work with Kojima again, but I do respect him and I look forward to all his projects. But he's been trying to replace me since MGS3. So imagine that though. You did you did Snake from MGS1 to 2, and then by the third game they don't want you to be voicing Big Boss and they don't want you to voice any other character. So that's why he's been like pretty upfront with it. It's like, hey, I'm not surprised. Like if you want to replace me, So yeah, I this whole thing, I'm not like gonna take sides. I'm gonna say that like the original voice actor is bad, yada yada yada. Look, at the end of the day, she could complain and she could make a issue and everything like that. Sure, you could make the argument that like yes, the 4,000 deal is incredibly insulting, but then again though, the previous excuse on why they didn't hire her was due to scheduling conflicts. And if you know any PR stunt that basically says yeah, she ain't coming back because we ain't gonna pay her for it. I'm not entirely surprised. I'll pick up Bayonetta 3 if you want to have a moral dilemma behind it and you still want to play on your Switch. Buy the game used. That way, Nintendo and Platinum doesn't make a fucking cent out of your purchase, or emulate it on Yuzu. Your fucking choice.
It's yeah. When it comes to this game specifically, when the news first came out, like on Twitter, everyone was talking about it. Everyone in the voice acting community was talking about it, and like I'm all for giving voice actors more pay because obviously they get the majority of their like of their earnings when it comes to like conventions and
A job,
signings
yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah,
So
you don't
like
get royalties and shit.
yeah, if they don't get royalties, most of their like stuff is like just getting
Once the project's done, that's it. You stop getting paid.
right, and they get most of their monies by going to conventions, getting autographs and all that stuff. Like that's like surprisingly how they get their money when it comes to just like living their life. All that being said, like it's one of those things that like well like what games out there, what RPGs out there where like there's different quest lines, there's different like actual timelines that will be set because you chose to pick up this fork instead of that spoon, and then you got to make a whole dialogue tree of like 10 billion words just because of a new timeline you created. All that being said, like those guys get compensated, but when it comes to like a linear story progression game where it's the same lines over and over and over again with some variation, they get paid a flat rate. There's an industry flat rate, and it's kind of like I get it. It exists out there. If you're in a union, you'll get covered or at least compensated more. But when this story first came out, it was like it just blew up. And obviously, like when I first saw it, I'm like, well, if it's true, if all this is true and all, like I get why people be mad and this kind of sucks. But like I don't know. I'm only hearing it from one side. Like I hope this is all in good faith, but it seems like the more time that goes on, there might be some of bad, like a bad faith interpretation of this whole situation of the Bayonetta's voice actress. So I'm starting to be concerned that this is more of a PR stunt more than anything for her to like get popular. So like obviously we have to wait until like more time passes and
Yeah,
more
because
information comes
there's
out.
been wording that like Platinum Games has revealed, like according to them, receipts, or they could prove that like, yeah, we initially offered her like way more money, but she wanted more money, and so we eventually just said to her like, hey, look, we're only gonna give you $4,000, which,
Well,
yes, it's
that's
incredibly
she said, "What am I worth to you guys?" And because apparently, since they were being insulted by her, the dude insulted her back and said only 4,000, and it was like
for a
things
whole
taken.
session.
Yeah, so it's one of those
Well,
things that's
the whole game, yeah,
the whole game.
not
Yeah,
per
so
session.
it's one of those things where like it's less money. They're offered less money only after all this was done, said and done, all this drama and all that stuff. So like it's one of these things that like now you like it's very very important for people to not be sheep and see like you got to look at the both sides of the argument because honestly, just hearing from one side. Sure, first come first serve is usually like how it's seen when some of these dramas, but like we won't know until obviously we get the update from both sides, from Platinum or from the who's this guy's name that's infamous because of like
Hideki Kamiya.
him, yeah. So
I mean, I would have liked it better if like Hideki Kamiya like replied to the tweet saying, like, well, originally we offered you the Wendy's 4x4 and you said no to that offer. So I felt like I made a pretty good offer though.
yeah, you go, just trying to meme her out. So yeah, it's one of those things
Yeah.
where anytime something new comes up, just make sure uh to not believe everything you see. Make sure you get both sides before you can make an informed opinion on it. So yeah, it's one of those things that where this situation has led to a lot of people obviously um what do you call it? A lot of people has have dropped their pre-order copies of it, and it's one of those things that if it turns out that she was being malicious about the facts being uh like the way
Steered.
she let all the facts, she can get sued because if it used to have like, hey, we had 10,000 pre-orders. This is hypothetical, right? We had 10,000 pre-orders. After she dropped this video, we lost 5,000. They can't sue her for that if everything turns out to be like she interpreted everything in a bad faith way. So voice actors don't get like they don't have enough money as it is already when it comes to making a living, and this is going to be on top of all that. But we'll have to see what the future holds. But that's it for now, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. Like I said, I still need to play the games. I have both Bayonetta 1 and 2, one on Steam, and then I bought Bayonetta 1 and 2 on Switch, and I still haven't really played it. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's like it's sort of the thing where like I was bringing up the point where like if people want to buy Bayonetta 3, probably some people and they know about the circumstances gonna be like, is it a bad thing if I Bayonetta 3? It's like when people say like, oh, should I feel bad about like listening to Travis Scott after the whole Astroworld fiasco? It's like, I mean, who gives? It's yeah, Travis. I mean, like I still listen to R. Kelly, and that motherfucker got sentenced to prison for sex trafficking. But am I gonna stop listening to him? Like,
I'm
probably
surprised his
not.
music's still up because usually like Spotify would like drop their music, like for Triple X Tentacion, like they dropped his music when to be played on Spotify when this whole like domestic violence thing happened with his pregnant girlfriend at the time. So it's one of those things that I'm like it's surprising
Hey
that
man,
R. Kelly's music's still up.
if we're gonna be playing by those rules, at that point, you're gonna be removing like a good chunk of like your library at
Oh,
that
of course,
point.
yeah.
Yeah, the only time I've ever seen like Spotify remove someone is straight up as just either copyright issues or because they basically said like, hey, we don't like the fact that you're funding Joe Rowe over there, and he's like telling some like coronavirus conspiracies, and that really pissed me off. Like when Neil, I forgot the artist's name, but basically said like, hey, fuck you Spotify, I want nothing to do with you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty fucking crazy. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, I think we should wrap. It's been we've been going on for almost an hour and a half now. Thank you so much for watching and listening to the DKM podcast. We greatly appreciate you guys' patience. We're gonna try our best to get back into the swing of things. It's just life is very uncertain, and time is very fleeting for us. So we just want to say thank you so much for watching and listening to the DKM podcast. As you guys know, you can watch us on YouTube and you can listen to us on your favorite streaming services like Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. I did update the link tree to also have some other obscured streaming platforms. I think Podbean is up there now, so you might want to check that out if you want to. Follow us on Twitter at DKM Podcast, so you guys can keep up to date on whatever's going on between the DKM trio. And if you haven't yet, feel free to join our Discord server. Links are all down below. We would love to have you in our community. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say thank you so much for watching and listening. Take care. Until next time. See ya.